you have to understand there's a right-left paradigm. It's called psyops, okay? And it's on the grassroots. Anything politically grassroots or on the grassroots level, right? Republicans against Democrats. Why do you think they have the word rhino?
How is she
pays for the dossier? Nothing.
But Obama made her Secretary of State, Larry Elder.
Yeah, because he knows she's a killer. He knows what's up.
Goes to Juanita Broderick and says, you better keep your mouth shut or else.
Or else.
So now the question is the other way around. Is an intelligence man the kind of person we want for president? I think there's some serious questions about that because, Tom Wicker said in the New York Times a couple months ago that a CIA man could be blackmailed as president because of things that he knows or things that he might have been involved in or something like that.
So let's talk about RFK, a little bit about the CIA involvement in JFK, the right-left paradigm that the globalists want you to think is happening, that Republicans against Democrats, why Democrats are recruited more into the cloak and daggers, and just a little bit, and how we've come a long way through the media and with corruption, how the cloak and daggers have taken over the White House, and how it didn't start with the Clintons. It started with George Bush Sr., maybe even before that. I'm not sure about Reagan, but I don't know. When did it start? So let's nibble on a few things here.
We spoke to someone who had access to these still hidden CIA documents, a person who was deeply familiar with what they contain. We asked this person directly, did the CIA have a hand in the murder of John F. Kennedy, an American president? And here's the reply we received verbatim. Quote, the answer is yes. I believe they were involved. It's a whole different country from what we thought it was. It's all fake. It's hard to imagine a more jarring response than that. Again, this is not a, quote, conspiracy theorist that we spoke to. Not even close. This is someone with direct knowledge of the information that once again is being withheld from the American public. And the answer we received was unequivocal. Yes, the CIA was involved in the assassination of the president.
The voice in the form of a Secret Service agent who is finally, after nearly 70 years, speaking out about what he saw that day. A man named Paul Landis, who was splattered with JFK's blood and brains. A man who rode in the limousine after JFK had had his head blown off by multiple bullets that would have been impossible to have fired from Lee Harvey Oswald's rifle. So, ladies and gentlemen, what did Paul Landis see that day? What it comes down to is a copper-jacketed 6.5 millimeter projectile. The Warren Commission decided that one bullet fired that day struck the president from behind, exited the front of his throat, continued to hit Mr. Connolly, somehow managing to injure his back, chest, wrist, and thigh. It seemed incredible that a single bullet could do all that. So skeptics call it the magic bullet theory. Because, of course, that's not how ballistics work. Anybody who's ever fired a round out of a firearm would know this. Investors came to that conclusion partly because the bullet was found in the stretcher believed to have held Mr. Connolly's body. But Mr. Landis, who was never interviewed by the Warren Commission, that's a little weird. Why wouldn't you interview the guy who was splattered with JFK's brains? You wouldn't interview him? He said that's not what would happen. He said he found the bullet. Mr. Landis found the bullet.
So if we're going to talk about the Lahaina fires, and we're going to keep it real, keep it 100, right? Then we have to, I need to either teach you, or you guys can teach me, or we teach each other. You have to understand there's a right-left paradigm. It's called psyops, okay? And it's on the grassroots. Anything politically grassroots or on the grassroots level, right? Republicans against Democrats. Why do you think they have the word rhino? Okay. It's not a partisan thing. Globalism does not recognize partisanship in the United States. Because remember, we were Americans already teetering back and forth, but we all believed in the Constitution, Democrats and Republicans, during the JFK years. They called them blue dog Democrats. Today they would probably be voting Republican. Or very conservative, not Republican anymore, I'm sorry, libertarian or constitutionalist or independent. I consider myself a constitutionalist. but it's the right-left paradigm, and you're going to find out. Remember, I said I like that news couple with the rising. I can't remember the name of the program, but anyway, you'll see them. As I was doing this research on JFK, I'm realizing, and I wanted to hit on this because we've been talking about coverts and cloak and daggers doing nefarious things. Well, you have to understand that globalism and the CIA and the NSA and all those who are infiltrating those things, they don't care if you're conservative or liberal, because they're left. They are neo-Marxists. And the reason, and you'll be like, well, it's got to be more Democrat, Troy, because more Democrats are in that. Well, that's because they can recruit them more because they have less morals and values. Yeah. But other than that, it's a psyops game when you see people play partisan politics. When you see groups on YouTube that aren't getting shadow banned, and YouTube is allowing them to talk away on their conspiracy theories without any problems whatsoever, you remember this. They are being allowed to talk because they are throwing they're throwing you off. Notice how this couple in the three different things that they talk about here always mention the left being the ones that expose true conspiracies.
I'm just reading this great NBC News article on the JFK files that points out Soviet officials thought the assassination was a conspiracy on the part of the ultra-right to start a coup and worried that some irresponsible general might shoot a missile at the Soviet Union.
Now, notice something here. He mentions a great article from NBC that he's reading, right? That the Soviets thought it was an ultra-right conspiracy to start a coup.
And then apparently in these documents is a list of ways the CIA had considered for killing Fidel Castro. Poison pills in a drink, hiring a mobster. One contemplated giving Castro a skin diving suit contaminated with a fungus. Another called for planting a seashell filled with explosives in an area where Castro went diving. Oh, what a beautiful shell. I will listen to the ocean. Kaboom!
I mean, what's crazy about this?
So I guess I'm saying I can't believe that I credited this this network or this channel to being of substance when it's not. So my question to you is RFK. This is a different generation, right? He was a child at the time. His father was Bobby Kennedy. His uncle was John F. Kennedy, president. And his dad and uncle were assassinated. Is he sincere about what he believes? And he could still be sincere and still be doing this just to get elected. I'm not saying that's what's happening. When I listen to him, I see a man that knew from a young age that his uncle and father were not killed by psycho stalker type guys.
In regards to the files in your uncle's assassination, President John F. Kennedy, we know that not all the files have been released. If you become president, will you release all the files?
We have a law in this country, the JFK assassination documents law, that says that all those documents legally have to be released to the public. Why are they withholding 5,000 documents illegally 60 years after my uncle's death? You know, all the people who were involved in that murder are now dead. So who are they protecting? And clearly, you know, there's institutional anxieties about releasing that law, but the American people are entitled to them. It's an important thing for us to understand what happened. It was a coup d'etat against American democracy. President Trump promised that when he became president, he was going to release them, because it's his legal obligation to do so. President Biden promised that he would. Both of those presidents broke their word to the American people.
How do you think you'd be able to release them? When we have...
And just a question. I voted for Trump twice. How do you feel about him not releasing those documents that he promised? How do you feel about Trump saying that he was going to clean up the swamp and we still have a swamp? He says it was worse than he thought. How is he going to do that a second term? Do we have the power to clean up the swamp? Okay, pay close attention. Clintons. How do you say that? The M word for
Making people not alive again.
And Morning Joe in 2015 and his wife and what they were saying then, and how we have gotten away from that with the wokeism and the being afraid, how preposterous it was to even talk about the Clintons and all the things that they were involved with, or also planting rumors and saying that conservatives are doing that or Trump did that when really Hillary did it. And we're talking about the birther thing with Obama. Check this out.
We just verified by Democrats that the birther was started by Hillary.
Right.
Yeah,
I
right
can say
there.
one other thing, too.
Here we go.
It was rich this weekend. I guess we have to get our digs in on Hillary Clinton here, because I thought we were going to get through a segment without talking about her.
Oh, well, she's
but for Hillary Clinton to come out and criticize anybody for spreading the rumors about Barack Obama, when it all started
on 60 Minutes,
when it all started with her and her
She's a
campaign
pro.
passing things around in the Democratic primary. Rich, now listen.
he says he is.
The Republicans are wrong for doing what they're doing. This started with Hillary Clinton, and it was spread.
Good for
by
Morning
the
Joe for
Clinton
saying
team.
this.
We're
I'm
just
shocked.
telling the
Back in
truth.
2008.
Sorry.
What time
I
are
really, I don't
Look,
even know.
that is the truth.
Carol,
I don't
please,
believe.
don't.
But Mika, you can't tell me to stop when the two of you are making comments. It'd be different if if there's a basis, an actual evidentiary basis for what you're saying. Then I would agree with it.
That they're
I
the
have
ones that spread it in
experience.
2008.
That spread what in 2008?
That Barack
this-
Obama
keep
may not be.
playing.
Barack Obama may not be a Christian.
We should ask Heilman this
Watch
question.
this.
That's John Heilman.
Heilman?
Historian of the 2008 campaign.
I don't recall that, but if you're telling me that was the case, I just don't recall.
John
It
Heilman?
was the case.
It was,
Thank you.
It was the case. Thank you, John Heilman.
Didn't she go on 60 Minutes and not actually
It was
say
the
no?
case.
Is that what he says he is?
I'm offering my.
What was that? Harold?
I'm affirming the Scarborough Brzezinski.
Okay, do you know about this
See how I had on morning
CBS
show.
interview? Was that rigged?
I don't know anything about. I have no knowledge whatsoever of what happened.
I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened
the
campaign and John Dickerson.
I don't know
no
what
idea.
happened on that interview either, but you do recall that a week earlier she went on Andrea Mitchell, and it was all emails all the time for the first 20 minutes of that interview.
That's pretty
so she has done
intense.
interviews.
Scott,
in
you can
which
stop
there
it
was
right
no
there.
So you were
holds
right.
barred.
No.
Of course I'm
So,
But more importantly, a guy named James Asher, A-S-H-E-R, who worked for McClatchy,
Pull that up.
said that Sidney Blumenthal approached him and said Obama is not from here. And he tracked it down and found nothing to it.
got it.
And Sidney Blumenthal is Hillary's hatchet man.
You know what's interesting about that is that was in what year, Rob?
15.
That was 2015. This was the year I literally used to watch Morning Joe and Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski, John Heilman, and everyone that's on there literally every morning for 2 straight years, okay? And this was when Joe Scarborough was actually a friend of Donald Trump. So was Mika Brzezinski. They were he was at their wedding.
Joe Scarborough used to be a Republican.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and used to demean Al Sharpton, signed a resolution, introduced a resolution calling Al Sharpton a race-hustling demagogue.
Right.
And now they kiss each other's butts.
Well, he's on his show
it's
every
amazing.
morning.
It's
on his
amazing.
show.
Yeah.
But this is my point.
The Reverend.
Thank you. This is my point. In a few short years, from 2016 to the Trump election to basically where we are today, the media has completely gone to different sides.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
Completely gone to different sides. So here's my question. The media has already done this. If there's one thing I've learned since Trump has been elected office, that the deep state is real.
Absolutely.
And they do not want Donald Trump to be president. They didn't want him in 2016.
Right.
They didn't want him in 2020. They did everything in their power to get him out of office.
Right.
And they're going to do everything in their power to do it again in 2024. So if he is elected, which is 50-50 at this point, they're going to do everything in their power to belittle his candidacy or his presidency. He's a racist, he's white percent, Russia, this, that, the other. They're going to play clips of January 6th. It's just going to happen over and over and over again.
The trust in the media has never been lower, and that's because Donald Trump has popularized the expression fake news and disinformation.
By the way, you have to give Hillary credit because she's the first one that said it's the election was a fraud. First one that said birther. First one.
Yeah.
Russia.
The way this woman is
Email, like she's untouchable.
master of deception.
30,000 emails Poof, gone.
Holy moly.
Nothing.
How is she?
Pays for the dossier? Nothing.
But Obama
Nothing.
made her Secretary of State, Larry Elder.
Yeah, because he knows she's a killer. He knows what's up.
Goes to Juanita Broderick and says, "You better keep your mouth shut, or else."
Or
Nothing.
else.
Nothing.
And Larry, how is she so untouchable? Can you explain that to me? Like, I don't get.
Well,
how is
she did lose the election against Donald Trump in 2016 because her unfavorable ratings were as high, if not higher, than Donald Trump's. They kind of offset each other.
Wow, but I'm saying, how is she? Is she that embedded with the FBI and the DOJ and she can literally kill someone and get away with it, literally,
allegedly,
allegedly, literally.
Well, I'm not going to concede about that part, but yeah, of course. I mean, the DNC was fixed for her. Donna Brazile gave her campaign questions. Remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Debate questions to make sure she was going to win the nomination. Look, there's a conspiracy of interest with the media, Democratic Party, big tech, Hollywood, academia. Hillary Clinton was accused by Juanita Broderick of
having that team around,
of threatening her.
Yeah.
When after Juanita Broderick said she'd been raped by Bill Clinton.
Yes.
I've not heard anybody ask Hillary whether or not it's true or false.
Yep.
People think that Hillary Clinton has committed murder multiple times. I've heard that.
My point is, there are a lot of no-fly zones the media has when it comes to protecting people on the left, and this is not uncommon. I couldn't care less whether Obama is gay. I couldn't care less whether or not Michelle is Big Mike. I think Obamacare is an abomination. I think what he did on race relations set this country back. That's what I care about.
And before I get into my closing remarks, which I do have, and it's beautiful, I want to say this. There are true conspiracies and there are false conspiracies, and there's probably just as many, okay? For instance, you believe in conspiracies until you come across something like I did on Reddit that talks about Mormonism's 12 apostles are CIA agents, or the people of Utah have New York to thank for a runaway train Utah judge who believes his own father was a modern-day apostle of Jesus Christ. Do you understand? There are people, for instance, that will trace us back to New England, to Masonry, to all kinds of things. Here's my point. Yes, there are true conspiracies, and I believe in them, brothers and sisters, just as much as you do. But let's also not be quick to say everything is a conspiracy just because it has associations with each other, just because there's some connection there. For instance, a photo op, President Trump taking a picture with Epstein doesn't mean that he was on Epstein Island. I'm not saying he wasn't, okay? All I'm saying is, or for instance, there was President Monson shaking the hands of George Bush Jr., and people are like, look, he's giving him the Masonic handshake. Sometimes when you grab somebody's hand and shake it, it can look like something else because you're grabbing it real quick. So let's just be careful. Okay, we don't know. Not everything is connect the dots. And you can connect the dots, but they're not always going to look. Well, you can make it look like something, right? Look, that's a candle. Well, no, it's a tree.
But you made it look like a candle.
You guys get what I'm saying. And here's where I will end with some quotes, of course, some very fortifying quotes. Joseph Fielding Smith, 1950. This was about the time the CIA was going full charge, okay? The late 40s, people started knowing. Yeah, that's when they came to be, the NSA. That's when we started seeing something from them. The 1950s, here we go. Here's Joseph Fielding Smith, quote, "Now I tell you, it is time the people of the United States were waking up with understanding that if they don't save the Constitution from the dangers that threaten it, we will have a change of government." Moroni. "And it came to pass that they formed a secret combination, even as they of old, which combination is most abominable and wicked above all in the sight of God." Some of this might seem repetitive to you from me, but that's okay. Repetition is good. Ezra Taft Benson, "I testify that wickedness is rapidly expanding in every segment of our society. It is more highly organized, more cleverly disguised, and more powerfully promoted than ever before. Secret combinations lusting for power gain and glory are flourishing. A secret combination that seeks to overthrow the freedom of all nations, lands, and countries is increasing in its evil influence and control over America and the entire world. The same man that Ezra Taft Benson was prophet during the time that this man was vice president. And he was also prophet, but in his later years when this man was president of the United States. Let's end with this video.
Attended the University of Wisconsin in Madison, 1965, 1969, and it's hard to see, and we will take a phone call here very shortly, but this is printed in the nation. You've got a larger version of it. I'll hold it up here.
Real size.
It's real hard to read it, although I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference because the camera can get real close on this. What is this?
Well, that's the FBI document. It's a memo from J. Edgar Hoover to the State Department, November 29th, 1963, on the assassination of President Kennedy. And in the last paragraph there's a reference to George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency.
You're talking about this?
Right down there, yeah.
Right here. And we'll get a close-up of that so that our audience can see it. We should have that here, right where my finger is.
That's right.
Reference to George Bush. What do you plan to do with this story next?
Well, I'm here to follow up on it and just checking around to see what else I can turn up.
Okay, let's go to the phones. First call for this hour, New York City. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, C-SPAN.
Morning.
I think it's quite interesting that certain issues seem to surface in cyclic fashion. It was just over a month ago that a young woman reporter on your morning show was saying that one of the aspects of George Bush's resume, which he could tout over the country, was the fact that he had been CIA director. And at that time, I did call to express a point of view which I'd like to try and briefly reinforce and see what Mr. McBride's reaction. In the British court system, much as a butcher may be prized as a useful profession, he is not permitted to serve on a jury. The belief being that the nature of his work, through no fault of his own, may desensitize him to the nature of suffering. And it seems to me that, with respect to our CIA, through no fault of their own, these patriotic individuals are subjected to a type of training which teaches them to do a lot of things which the CIA is known for doing, and it may be all for America, but it is very often things which we would tend to consider illegal if they were done in our own country.
How does this relate to George Bush, sir?
Well, what I'm getting to is the idea that perhaps just as the British feel that a butcher, though he may be prized as a useful profession, should not serve on a jury, we might come to a point where we consider the need to carefully cordon off the CIA from the rest of our civilian government.
Okay, thanks. Joe McBride?
Well, as I understand, I guess the question is, does being in the CIA possibly disqualify you from being president or holding political office? Is that the gist of it? It's kind of a curious paradox that George Bush's background, whenever he was appointed to an important job, which he was appointed to a whole succession of jobs as UN ambassador, liaison officer to China, head of the Republican National Committee, etc., people would always say, well, what is his background? What is his experience? And the UN thing, for example, people said, why is he qualified? What foreign policy experience does he have? He's just a two-term congressman who was defeated for the Senate and all this. And apparently he had a lot of background that we didn't know about that accounts for the president's appointing him to all these positions. But the criticism that he got back then was that he was too much of a politician and not a diplomat and not a professional intelligence man, et cetera. And it's very ironic in light of this information. Apparently, the people who appointed him knew something that we didn't know, and even the members of Congress didn't know. So now the question is the other way around. Is an intelligence man the kind of person we want for president? I think there's some serious questions about that because, Tom Wicker said in the New York Times a couple months ago that a CIA man could be blackmailed as president because of things that he knows or things that he might have been involved in or something like that.
Pampa, Texas, for Joe McBride. Go ahead, please.